Uh, I'm 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 almost freaking out right now because I just got some breaking news that I have to share with you guys now. Okay, that's enough of that. The 49ers and Brandon Ayuk reached an agreement today on a 4-year extension that will contractually tie the wide receiver to the 49ers for the next 5 seasons, according to Adam Schefter, just dropping just right now, completely throwing away the next segment I had planned for you guys. So we'll see what we'll do about that, but I will find some more information on what that deal will ultimately be. And here it is. Brandon Ayuk is getting a front loaded 4-year deal with the 49ers worth $120 million per year. So if I do the math real quick, 120 by 4, I should know this, is $30 million per year. I'll provide more details on that today or maybe tomorrow. We'll see. But I guess we will talk about Russell Wilson just for right now. Wow. That's nuts. That's nuts. Brandon Ayuk, $30 million per year. But that's not what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about is the Steelers, relatively to the Brandon Ayuk news. They were in talks with trading for him, but now that's all out the window. And with this news of quarterbacks and just finishing talking about the Patriots and who they will be having as their starting quarterback, we're going to talk about now the Steelers. Yesterday, the Pittsburgh Steelers, their head coach Mike Tomlin announced that Russell Wilson will officially be the starting quarterback for the 2024 season. After their third preseason game, we sort of got a heads up by Mike Tomlin that their decision was going to come at some point this week. He sort of said towards the end of their work week, and now we got it a little bit earlier, just on Wednesday, halfway through their work week. So now Tomlin mentioned it to the media that he met with both quarterbacks and informed them both of the decision prior to the announcement. He described it as a very difficult decision to make, but ultimately, it fell back on all the reasons that I pretty much mentioned with Jacoby and with the Patriots, speaking about his resume, speaking about who Russell Wilson is in terms of uh, his reputation, still having the arm talent, obviously still there. The long throw, the deep ball was always an intriguing portion of Russell Wilson's game for the Steelers, and now that is ultimately what they're going with to start the year at least. And with this decision and how it relates to Justin Fields, because obviously this was another one that sort of felt a lot closer than a lot of people gave credit for, at least at the beginning, right? Because when both of them were acquired, right away, people thought that it was going to be Russell Wilson's job with how everything broke down with Kenny Pickett and things like that. Russell Wilson coming in and sort of what you were hearing with some reports, you got the idea that, Russ was going to be the starter. And then once they traded for Justin Fields as well, then it got a little bit more confusing. And to add on top of that, when Russ, gets injured right before the start of training camp, you have Justin Fields right away get thrown to have the starter reps right off the bat in training camp. And while everybody, I feel like, sees the athleticism with Justin, his running ability is not that far back from some of the best. Just thinking of Lamar, Josh, Justin Fields is right up there, and that was always something that you were going to get with him. But I think throughout training camp, there was some excitement, some optimism that maybe Justin, with being in a new situation, being around maybe coaches that fit him, could develop him a little bit more in Arthur Smith and the Steelers quarterback coach, and just everything being around a new facility. A lot of people felt that in combination with the weapons that he had also with the Steelers as well. You think of George Pickens, Najee Harris, and Pat Freiermuth, that this could be a great situation for Justin, not only in the grand scheme of things, but now with this unexpected opportunity with Russell Wilson being hurt. Everybody right away, started talking about it more. Maybe Justin should start. Maybe he offers more than Russell Wilson. He's younger. He can run a little bit more. Russell might not be there anymore, and he could be, done. He could be burnt out by now in regards to Russell Wilson. But Mike Tomlin, credit to him. He always kept it the same message each and every time anybody asked him whether or not Justin sort of gained an edge over Russell or whether or not they were on equal grounds now. Mike Tomlin always kept saying, the same old thing. Russell was in pole position each and every time. If I never have to hear that again, it'll be too soon. But, it just showed me that Russ has always and was always going to be a starting quarterback to me. That's why, I was excited as a Steelers fan seeing Justin Fields perform very well throughout training camp, making some nice throws, some good decision making. I think the turnovers and his processing was a big question in Chicago, and that seemed not to be completely gone with the Steelers, but it looked a little bit cleaner, at least throughout the footage and clips that I saw in training camp. But, Mike Tomlin, it seemed like he was never going to waver off of Russell Wilson unless he played, awful, really bad. And even then, he didn't play in the preseason game. He played a good amount of snaps in practice, and then the third preseason came around, and he only played one drive, and he played a little bit better, obviously, but how much can you really improve with one drive? And that was pretty much the final nail in the coffin for me. Seeing Russell just go out there, barely breaking a sweat, playing one drive, pretty much said to me that, Russ is going to be the starting quarterback, and now we were just waiting for the final announcement, the official announcement, but it doesn't mean that it is the end for Justin Fields by any means. Tomlin on the Rich Eisen show and also in his media conference after Wednesday's practice, he said that he didn't rule out the possibilities of having packages for Justin Fields, but he wouldn't give any further details on what that means or what specifically he would be doing in certain scenarios or anything like that. So we're going to have to wait and see on September the 8th when they play the Atlanta Falcons. But this was always the most likely outcome, not only because Russ outplayed Justin Fields drastically or anything like that, but it always felt like the safer option. And the Steelers, if you follow them in any sort of manner over the last few years, it's very hard to convince Mike Tomlin of anything else that he has in his mind. Of course, he's willing to adapt and everything like that, but it always takes a good amount of time to finally see that change. They kept Matt Canada around a lot longer than I think a lot of people expected them to, and also, it's just that same sort of traditional feeling with the Steelers that they really have to be convinced about something until they go out and do it. And you saw it just when Omar Khan came in and drastically changed that. They were very aggressive with everything, going out and getting both Russell and Justin. It sort of flipped it a little bit now, but there are still those tendencies that you still see from Tomlin, from the Steelers, on making changes like that. So it felt like the safer option. And again, I say that sort of in a pessimistic, negative connotation, and I don't mean it to sound like that, but just because I feel like this was the right decision overall, and really for the opportunity to see just Justin Fields later on in the year, because at the beginning, I don't think a lot of teams start off the year perfect by any means. There are still a lot of things to work out, a lot of things that you try. Maybe you want to try again later on in the year, or they don't work at all. You want to scrap it and things like that. I feel like starting off with a veteran was always going to be a little bit smoother, and also you get the opportunity to work out all those kinks, work out your final rosters and who fits in what role through the first couple of weeks, and then it gives Justin Fields a better landscape to come into when he is needed, if he is needed this season, and he doesn't have to work or shuffle through a lot of other problems that I think Russell Wilson was better suited to handle and maneuver this team through. And also with how the schedule broke down, it was never going to be a case that Russell wasn't going to play against the Broncos. That was always going to happen. He was going to play against the Falcons, and he was, of course, going to be the starting quarterback against the Denver Broncos. You couldn't have convinced me of anything else, quite honestly, so that was always going to happen. Another reason why I thought, Russ was going to be the starter, and just some factors in here to consider for watching Russ and making sure he does these things in order to keep his job a little bit longer, obviously, right? Some of those things that I'll be looking at would be, not taking unnecessary sacks, not trying to be Superman out there, holding the ball too long in that same breath. The decision-making is a big one, obviously, and the execution tagging along with putting up more points, because that has been a hard thing to do for the Steelers over the last couple of years. With Matt Canada, obviously, that was a big component of it. But now that you have a new offensive coordinator, they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be scoring 25 points per game right off the bat. But it has to look a little bit cleaner, a little bit more exciting than just throwing out routes, throwing comeback routes, and not looking at the middle of the field at all. I think the Steelers did a good job of bringing in someone that can do that. We saw it a little bit in preseason, so hopefully it carries on into the regular season, or else, like all you guys were aware last year, those Steelers fans will get very loud when they don't want somebody to play, or when they want someone honestly fired, like you heard all the chants about Matt Canada last year. So they're not going to be shy in sharing their opinion if this offense and Russ is just not doing it for them. So you don't want that, obviously, happening again. So that's going to be a big proponent of getting Russell to stay around as the starting quarterback if he's able to do all those things. And also, just lastly, with this, ultimately the final point with Russ and Justin and how they play into this decision, you pretty much already know what Russell Wilson is and what you're going to get out of him. At this point in his career, I think he's 34, 35 years old now. There's no real more room to grow. There's no more room. I think we've already hit that ceiling, obviously, with Russ, and he is a safer option because you know everything that he is capable of, right? But with Justin Fields, I think he could benefit a little bit more from fine-tuning his skills a little bit more, learning the offense, knowing what reads work, knowing what works against other defenses over the course of the year. I feel like that's going to be very beneficial to Justin when and if he gets his opportunity at some point this year. Hopefully he does, because both of them are on contract years. So if you don't see one quarterback at all, I don't really see a world where you can really extend them. So we're going to see when that decision does come. But for right now, for however many weeks, Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback out there on Sundays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But moving on with another topic, I guess we're going to have a little impromptu Brandon Ayuk segment on here, because I was going to talk about the frustrations that we saw on Wednesday with him not showing up to practice again, but I guess we'll tie that in. That'll be the next segment, talking about Brandon Ayuk and his new contract with the 49ers. So stay tuned. A lot more coming on today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking